my general opinion, and I'm very keen to get your thoughts on this. I've got a concern, singular, and I've got many reasons to be faithful in Daniel Farke. Now, my concern is what you've said, is that Norwich lose their underdog status where Farke has had so much success. So you look at players like Stevenman, Pookie, Krul, looking to find themselves, looking to make a name for themselves. That's where the hunger comes from. My concern naturally is we lose that next season. However, we do lose it next season. However, as you've made me feel a bit more at ease with it in terms of Stuart Webber will find value, or players who will bring value to the team. He'll find players who want to be here. He'll make sure players who don't want to be here won't be here. But the main reasons, whatever you want to call it, that I trust Daniel Farke is something that you said a minute ago, where if you're watching this podcast, you'll notice there's a massive grin on my face, which was he is learning. Now, the main thing is that, one, he is learning, and that's such an easy term to use in football, isn't it? That, you go down from the Premier League, you go down from any league, we'll learn from it next season. We said this about Alex Neil, didn't we? Well, no, exactly, and we said it about Alex Neil when we went down. There's only one Alex Neil chance at the end of that season. I remember being part of that in the River End.
The Watford game. That was... That was one of the moments, like, obviously my Norwich City fandom's not been something I grew up with. It's something that's come on to me, right?
Yeah.
They're now the club I care about most in the world, and they always will be.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is, for me, with that Watford game was a massive part in that. Because, like, the Gallows Humour, Ipswich Town were coming for you and all that. I just thought, this is brilliant. Mm-hmm. And Alex Neil, after the game, I remember his tone, and he was like, I've let you down this season. He took it all on himself. He's like, look, this is on me.
Yeah. Right?
Which is a kind of classic managerial trope, is to do it's me, not the players, right? Mm-hmm. But I looked beyond that, because Alex Neil's someone who always had he was quite a balchy wee character. He wasn't someone that he wasn't going to take any nonsense, Mm-hmm. And he's like, look, this is on me. And these fans, that was amazing tonight. We need to be better next season. And it didn't work out for Alex, and I'm gutted that it didn't.
Yeah.
I do kind of think that if he'd bought one more defender, right, that allowed us to have a proper championship back two.
And not Sebasong and Ryan Bennett.
Sebasong and Ryan Bennett, right? Ryan Bennett maybe worked in the championship, right? Sebasong's one of these players that he's a better Premier League defender, right? Tim Close, injuries prevented him showing it this season, but I think he's played his best football for Norwich City in the Premier League. And then I remember he sold the jerseys at Burton that time, like all of that kind of stuff. And I looked at it and I thought, buy a Shane Duffy, right? He was available at the time, right? Brighton got him, went up, right? What if we get Shane Duffy? I think, honestly, that was the difference in that campaign, because if you looked at that Norwich City season, right, we were brilliant at home, and those were the games that I always was there commentating, like, some of my favourite bits of my career.
Mm. We were top of the league for a while, weren't we?
Aye, and we were scoring for fun, and we were blasting teams away, and then we were losing at Burton because of silly defensive errors, and that's what led to the eventual. And I think, to be honest, like, a few of the characters kind of... There was a couple of defeats that season where it just was like...
Well, that was the man management, wasn't it? It sort of spiralled, didn't it?
That's it. And I remember one in particular where the one time I came quite close to falling out with Alec was after Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
And like I said, the players kind of like, what was it? I said they sort of down tools, I think was the phrase I used. And he's like, no, they didn't down tools, right? Because like we didn't get beat 10-1 and or like whatever. And we had a wee bit of thing, and I was like, right, fair enough. Because there's no point, like, if you're a journalist, there's no point in arguing with a manager when they're on that kind of mood, right? Like, you're not going to get any sense out of them. You're just going to get your head bitten off.
Yeah.
But Norwich City were dire that day.
Was that the 5-1 when Cameron Jerome came out and said some strong things?
Aye. And that was the thing. And I just thought, like, at that point, it looked like it was beginning to spiral. Now, next season for Daniel Farke, right? It's the one it's the most close reference point we've got. Now, the situation at the club's totally different. We don't have players on bloated wages. We've got no sort of system where the manager is kind of the figurehead. Because Alex Neil was very much the figurehead for that Norwich City era. Mm-hmm. You would say that Stuart Webber and Daniel Farke kind of share stats, and that's a product of the renewed structure at the club. Now, going down, Stuart Webber's job is to give Daniel Farke time, yes, but there's got to be a cut-off point. And I don't think he'll let it get to the stage that it did under Alex Neil, where it's like players are beginning to struggle to have the motivation to play for the coach, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And it's maybe unfair to point that at Alex, but I think you did see that characters were beginning to grate, and it just reached the end of its cycle.
Yeah.
Right? Not saying players should stop playing for him. That would be unfair to say. But it had reached a point where challenges had come to a point where there wasn't necessarily going to be any resolution, I don't think. And I don't think that's going to get to that stage under Daniel Farke. But that's the choppy waters that he has to navigate right now, is he has got to make sure that he keeps on side who he needs to keep on side. He needs to reinvigorate the hunger, and he needs to make sure that, I just feel the start to next season is massive for Daniel Farke and for Norwich City.
I'm going to say something to you, which is where I put a lot of my trust into in terms of this opinion, which is I've said I trust Daniel Farke will learn. He's shown so much evidence of learning in the past. And you talk about attitude and making sure you don't lose the players. Emi Buendia is the perfect example. You look at this, last season, he was untouchable, unplayable. What a player he was. There were fears that he'd become the next Sergi Canos. Did he? No, he didn't. He became this world beater for Norwich.
Sergi didn't get a chance, by the way. He's still a really good player. He's shown it at Brentford.
Well, no, yeah, he also helped us out last season, didn't he, when he played for Brentford against Leeds, which is we'll always remember that. But you look at Buendia this season, he didn't. I know it sounds mad. I said this on the podcast before, but I know he got a few assists, and there was a point where I think he had like 4, and that made him the most in the Premier League with Raheem Sterling. But he didn't really have a brilliant start, did he? And there were times in games where he was overplaying. You look at Watford as an example, gave the ball away, and I remember it was the international break after that game where we then came back and he was dropped. And I said in the podcast, because I did one with Connor and Joe, and we were like, he needs to be dropped, but not because he's not good enough, because he needs a breather, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And
Alex Ferguson did it all the time.
Exactly.
Alex Ferguson did it with really much better players than Norwich City have got, and it's like, I'm taking you out of the team, and you could say, you can count on one hand the players that Alex Ferguson did not do that with.
Yeah.
Right. Most of them probably goalkeepers, and I think the fact with a player like Emi Buendia, right? Mm-hmm. Emi Buendia is, I think he's the most gifted player at Norwich City.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, definitely in the attacking side of the game. Him and Ben Godfrey are the two for me that I just think are the crown jewels that we have.
Yeah.
Emi this season has, you look at that, they always trot out the graph, chances created, and he's near the top of that. He's a brilliant wee guy in terms of seeing passes and what's on and stuff like that. If his left foot was a bit better, he would be at one of the very best teams in the world. I
might be after Watford.
That's true, but I mean more sort of in the passing side.
Yeah,
you notice he always tends to, he'd rather play a curler with the outside his right boot than sort of an easier pass with his left.
He did against Liverpool with his left, didn't he? Threaded it through.
He did, because he's got it in his locker. I like this. I'm loving the case for the defence for Emi's left foot. But he is right-footed. But if he'd feet like Ivan Rakitic, right, he'd be at a big team already. Anyway, that aside, Emi's big problem this season has been goals he's been directly responsible for. That is one side of it. The other side of it is he doesn't track, right? He's got better, right? But the reason you would shove Lucas Rupp in that role is because Lucas Rupp is going to tuck in and do what the manager tells him defensively.
Well, that was Everton, wasn't it?
If you look at Everton, right? Yes, we weren't great at defending the cross balls into the box, but Lucas Digne's threat was nullified. And Lucas Digne's assists this season have been really good.
Yep.
If he could defend, he would be a better team than Everton. But what they did is, I actually sort of erroneously kind of thought that he was lazy in his press, but then I sort of looking at the game again tactically, I kind of realised that what they were actually asking Rupp to do was force Digne to cross the ball from deep. So if you go out and you fully press him, it gives him the outlet on the outside, or it creates like space for someone else to run into. Whereas if you tuck in and you've got your full back here and Rupp just in front of him, then what it does is you're saying to Digne, right, fling the ball in 30, 35 yards out, like ping it in, right, and see what you can do. Don't get me wrong, I'm not sure I trust our centre-backs to win the ball in the air necessarily all the time, but hey-ho.
It's a good idea.
That was an example of Rupp doing the job defensively.
Yeah.
And Emi Buendia, he doesn't offer that defensively. And yes, he's weird. He's like tenacious sometimes. Sometimes he'll do the kind of Wayne Rooney when he was like 20 thing of run back 50, 60 yards and put in a tackle, and you're like, yes, right? And I like that as much as like beating 3 men and scoring a goal just as much. Like when a player does something like that, shows real application. But he's not got defensive discipline. No. Right? Yeah. He's not got that. And he's not got that ability to sort of do that. He's also quite prone to sort of going in a huff, you know, like, and it's like, the game's not going for me.
Absolutely,
I'm just going to start flouncing, all of that sort of stuff. Whereas, compare that with Onel Hernandez, right? Onel Hernandez is, I mean, his decision-making in the final third is pretty abominable, but bar that, he's really good for Norwich City. He's direct, he runs hard, he runs fast, he keeps running, he keeps trying, he doesn't stop, right? And although he's less gifted, in a situation like the one we're in at the moment, that's almost better in a way. Absolutely, because it's like he's going to keep going. He's not going to let, like, the fact he's just a hard challenger, the fact that the last pass when he made a good run didn't come, he's not going to let that bother him. And he does. And that's where, you were right to bring it up as the kind of point with Daniel Farke, because there was a really sticky point. I can't remember the exact way he phrased it in the press conference, but he's like, what was the stat he trotted out for?
Is this about running?
Yeah, and it was to do with like the fact that everyone was trotting out the stats of chances created, stuff like that, and Daniel's coming out with these weird statistics that the data analysis boys have come up with, right?
Yeah.
But I think the point that Daniel was trying to come up with, or trying to make, was basically that it's the non-glorious side of the game
that he's doing well.
But that's where Emmy's fallen down.
Is that where he mentioned? Who was it he mentioned? Because he said about someone running more, didn't he?
Yeah, and he also said, like, I mean, the other one that sticks out for me glaringly is goals directly from mistakes. And look at that table, and in terms of where Emi Buendia is, and I think that tells you why Norwich City are not. It's why I wholeheartedly expected, staying up or going down, at the end of this season, we would bank 50 million plus for Emi Buendia. Yeah. I totally expected that. I now think he's a £30 million player if you're lucky.
Exactly the same here.
After the season that he's had. And that's disappointment. And that brings us back to a kind of previous point you made about player development and the club's regression. You know, like, has this been a regression? Obviously, it's going to be a regression in terms of league status, right? Yeah. But has it been a regression in terms of the value of the players? I think is a bigger question. Because if you go through the team, how many players do you think have added value to what? Because you would think, coming up for the Championship, right?
Yeah.
One season in the Premier League, go up or stay down, right? There's going to be, you're going to add value probably, right? Like more than you would take away for most of them. Mm-hmm. Would you say that Norwich City have done that? I would say that 2, maybe 3 have done that.
Yeah, I'd say they're probably the defenders, aren't they?
Yeah, well, I would say Max Aarons is just about probably stood pat. I think Jamal Lewis is probably just about stood pat. I think Ben Godfrey's value, everyone has seen, because he's got all the attributes you would want in a top defender. Yeah. And I think loads of people blame him for losing headers at corners, but quite often because of the zonal marking. What's actually happening is people are missing the block. It's the first step of it. People are missing the block.
Well, that was yesterday, wasn't it?
Run on the centre back. Yeah, no, but it's happened a few times. Yeah. Like, even since the restart, I've seen it. And it's like, people are going, oh yeah, well, he keeps getting beat at corners. And it's like, no, look, it's the block that's missed that means that the guy's getting the run on him. Mm-hmm. You're not going to beat a guy who's running for a jump, like, standing still.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's basic physics. Anyway, Ben Godfrey, I think's added value. Todd Cantwell's added value.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Other than that, I think there's a few have gone down, and the rest have just about stayed on a level of the sort of main sellable assets anyway. So the kind of younger or more talented members of the squad, and that's got to be, that for me is the single biggest disappointment of this season, is the fact that we've come up and I'm not sure our squad is more valuable going back down. I think that is the biggest disappointment of this season.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the thing with Norwich, having watched them just all my life, is we're too loyal to players. You look at before Daniel Farke, the 5-year period maybe, where we'd bounce and we'd fall back down, and we became this yo-yo club because we'd stick with players. You look at like Russell Martin, for example, brilliant in the Championship.
I love
came
Russ.
up to the Premier. I also do. He came up to the Premier League, just wasn't good enough. But then we'd go back down, he'd be good enough again, back up, and he's not.
He's a good enough. See, when he was the Norfolk Cafu, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, yeah, but I mean,
No. But what I'm saying is, right, as the Norfolk Cafu at right back, and I think in that first sort of Premier League stint, brilliant. See, as soon as he became a centre back in the Premier League, nah.
Yeah, he's public enemy number one then, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, but I think that was the thing. Like, he wasn't a good enough marker to be a Premier League central.
He couldn't jump high enough, which was his problem for me.
And like his actual marking, like he had a tendency to lose people. Whereas, like, see when he under Paul Lambert, when he bombing up and down that line, man, unreal. So Premier League Cafu, yes. Premier League Aldair, maybe not.
No, that's a good point. But I think the idea of Norwich being a bit too loyal comes into play nicely here, because I think this window coming up will be a really brave one from Stuart Webber. This is going to be his most important one, for all the arguments of it, the first one being the most important one, where we look at the players like Vrancic. We still love them now. I think the one coming up will be the most important, and where I have trust in the board and Webber and Farke is that they've done it before, so why can't they do it again? Hodgie, I want to get your final opinion before I ask you one more question on should Farke be sacked.
As much as you want. You've got another hour till I'm needed in Football Manager, so you can carry on.
Well, I'll phrase it generously then. What's your last message? What's your last sort of statement on should Norwich City sack Daniel Farke?
No, and they won't. It's simple. Like, that's it. It's like, I'm interested in your view. Well, what do you think?
I know they won't. We all know they won't. That is clear to see. I'm glad they won't. And that's because he's shown such signs of progression. Now, what you mentioned there and what I put on my notes here is, was this season regressive? I don't think it was, in terms of the fact that I think it's a learning curve for him. This might be me clutching at straws.
Hold on. This is two questions, right?
Yeah.
And it depends what one you're asking, what my answer would be. Was this season regressive for Daniel Farke?
I would like, the wording.
Or was this season regressive for Norwich City? Because it's two different answers.
The phrasing I'll tweak there is, for Daniel Farke, it presents a learning curve, where the reason why I think he will learn
prove that. He's got to prove that, right? Because I think all that we've learnt since Project Restart is that we weren't fit enough.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'm throwing that out there as a kind of grenade, right? But we've not been up to it for whatever reason. The one thing I will say is to mitigate that is, I think in the empty stadiums, the quality of the superior teams has shown.
Yeah.
So Man United are no longer struggling away at teams like Burnley. It's like they've got the quality.
It's all about football now, isn't it?
Exactly. Fernandes has made a massive difference to them. But that's by the by. So I think Daniel Farke, yes, this could have been a good season for him, and he does seem to have learned at each sort of stage, but the learning curve has been steepest this season, and in terms of the pressure to deliver, it's going to be there for the first time, because people last season would have taken playoffs. It would have been progress. It's like, boom, right? Like, that's good.
Yeah.
They would have taken that as progress. And then, like, it's the old, we came up to it. Like, no, we didn't. The way we played last season, we should have been in the Premier League this year. I think we've tried. I don't think he's wrong for sticking to his principles in the Premier League, because when it's worked, it's been beautiful. I mean, you look at the games where we've near misses. The Spurs game, right? The Pookie thing. Like, come on. You know? I mean, and the game's different if that goes in. And the season could be different. Like, honestly, seasons hinge on small moments, and that was one that it could have been so different.
We saw that last season, but for a positive effect, didn't we? The goal against Middlesbrough. Exactly.
No, you're spot on, man. And that's the thing, right? So it could have been a good bit different, but when it's been bad this season, it's been really bad. And since Project Restart, the one thing I'm hoping is that he's tried out so many things that he now has a clear picture going into next season, at least in terms of the personnel he's got at the moment. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that this has given him what he needs to hit the ground running next season. But yes, if we hit our stride fairly quickly next season and we're right in contention for at least playoffs, I think you can say, especially if there's a big turnover, I think you can say Daniel Farke has learned the lessons. it hasn't been a massive regression. But for Norwich City as a club, I think it has been for the reason that I stated before, where I'm not sure the squad value has appreciated despite being in the Premier League. And that for me is a step backwards.
I will reciprocate everything you say there. I think that sort of draws a conclusion to our thoughts on the question of the podcast. Now, I want to finish off by getting your opinions on... You look at the entire squad, not just Norwich's assets, we'll call them. Who are you most concerned about leaving? Who do you think will leave? Who do you want to leave? Who do you think Norwich can realistically keep? Far away.
Right, okay. Gonna be putting my thing on the line. So, Todd Cantwell last season, right, was a bit part player. And a bit part player who I thought looked, at times, and I have been totally wrong about this, struggling to operate as a championship player. Like, arguably a League One standard footballer.
Yeah.
Now, I'm totally wrong. The difference is Todd Cantwell is a player whose attributes suit the Premier League.
Yeah.
Todd Cantwell is a technician. He's not physically great. He's not a really guy that sees a massively great mental picture in his head of the game. Mm-hmm. But technically, he's really, really nifty. And at times this season, he's been confident and he's taken his chances and he's added value to his price tag by scoring goals in the Premier League and against some big teams as well.
Yeah.
Now, that in mind, he's one I would like to go because I feel that right now, the same way that I think you might have got more money for Emi Buendia at this time last year, I think you'll get more money for Todd Cantwell now than you might this time next year. Then again, you could go down and score 20 goals in the Championship. Goodness knows, right? What do I know? I'm speculating. But my opinion is now's the time to sell on Todd.
Yeah.
As stock, it's like stock trading, isn't it? Right? Now's the time to sell on him. Mm-hmm. Max Aarons, I'd like to see get another season in the Championship because I think we'd then see how far his game can push. Jamal Lewis, I think it would be interesting to see. Jamal's a player that I think his ceiling is not as high as Max Aarons because
Absolutely.
Max Aarons is more going forward.
Absolutely.
Loads of times Jamal has great athleticism and like really good dribbling ability, and then he'll dribble past three people and pass it back to the centre back again, and I'm just like, fling across in, mate, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's my kind of thing with him. So on that basis, maybe depending on what the money would be, 20 million plus, I would probably take maybe with an add-on. I would probably take for Jamal Lewis.
Oh, I'd take 20 million. I'd take 15. This is where me and you probably differ in the fact that I think he might. I know he's young. Always key to remember he's young. But I think he sort of hit a ceiling at Norwich in the fact that because he came through before Max Aarons, he did it, but in not as much of a noticeable scenario. Because he had 6 months in Farke's first season, didn't he? Because I know he was injured and we were playing bloody James Husband, for Christ's sake.
I remember
very well as well. He came in and he looked like... I can't think of a world class. He looked like Roberto Carlos compared to James Husband, didn't he? But I think he might have hit that ceiling. And yesterday, and sort of the restart proves that to me in the sense that I know he's is it Ismail Assar? Is that his first name? Ismail
Assar,
something like that. Yeah, I know he's a £35 million signing, but he bullied Jamal Lewis. He absolutely sent him to the shops, and that's happened a few times this season for me. And going forward, where you can forgive a lack of defensive discipline and ability, you can make up for when a player goes forward. Where the difference for me when Max Aarons gets sort of defensively outdone is that going forward he's still pretty good. Now his crossing's got a lot of room for improvement. Believe me, I'm sure you're aware of that already. But
I think he just had a bad night the other night, to be fair to him.
I think so, yeah. We've seen before he can put brilliant crosses in. You look at Leicester away, Pookie should have scored, but yeah, that's a different podcast, isn't it? But Jamal Lewis going forward, he's just too timid. And
he is. He's tentative. You're right, and I think that's the thing. But I think, do you know what's interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Jamal Lewis, when he was coming through, he was a left winger.
Yeah, he's like Max Aarons as well, wasn't he? The right winger.
Yeah, but Jamal got converted to left back, and it's almost like I don't understand why he wasn't there in the first place, if you know what I mean, given the way his sort of attacking instincts seem to be. But he's very much wedded to that idea of find a yellow jersey rather than fling a cross in. Mm-hmm. And especially, see the game where we switched to 4-4-2, I just thought, wow, play an early cross, lads, there's 2 targets, you know? And that was the game where, for me, and again, that's one where maybe, again, another season in the Championship wouldn't do him any harm, but I think we both agree the ceiling probably isn't as high. And what you hope is, I mean, I think the other thing is, Norwich City have a lot of technicians and technical players in the squad. I think what we've seen this season is that the physicality of the Premier League is on a different level, which also emphasises, by the way, how beautiful our football was last season, right? Because it was a very artistic, technical sort of extravaganza that we got to enjoy last season. Yeah. And we've come up to the Premier League and we've just, I think you used the right word, I think we've just been bullied in far too many games, mate. And yeah, what you've got to wonder is, if we do go back to the Championship, are we going to just kind of regress to that level physically, or is there going to be a bit of an acceptance this summer from players? Because this is where you see the hunger in footballers or you don't, right? So there's going to be players this summer that go, oh, well, yeah, another pre-season, COVID had us, like, we're not even going to get a pre-season, you know? And there's going to be ones that go, right, we've got 3 weeks off, but you know what? I'm absolutely blasting the treadmill. I'm blasting the weights. I'm going to make sure that I'm a physical specimen coming into the next campaign. And if we've got enough players that have that hunger and application to do that, then they can continue to progress. And another season in the Championship will be good for them. And then I imagine if we have enough players that do that, we'll go up again.
Yeah.
And then what you've got to hope is that we've still got enough of that core that of young players that we can go and have a second go at it. And then at that point, that becomes like sort of a sink or swim for Daniel Farke, because these players have got the extra games, they've got the extra experience, and that's when it's to me at that point it would be more about the manager. Whereas at this point it's as much about how the path that individuals choose to go on. Ben Godfrey is the one that I think will go.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to pocket at least 35 million quid, maybe 40.
Well, so it came out that we were asking for 50, or will be asking for 50, but that's the English bargaining, isn't it?
No, but it's not even that, right? Stuart Webber said in my podcast, we will not be bullied. It's a mantra he's repeated, right? And I do believe that. We don't need to sell, right? But the idea that any club outside Bayern Munich in Germany is going to spend 50 million quid is a fallacy. Borussia Dortmund and Leipzig are not spending 50 million pounds. That's utter nonsense. Yeah. That's as nonsensical as 10 million quid gets you Todd Cantwell, right? That's what we're dealing with here. It's the start of the silly season, and Norwich are the early targets for it because we're gone, right? And we have a lot of young assets. So there's going to be loads of absolute nonsense talked over the weeks to come, right? And again, Mr. Webber will be ignoring the noise. But the one I expect to go is Ben Godfrey, and I expect us to get 40 million quid plus a sell-on, 35 at least.
Well, I was going to say, there's always going to be that sort of clause, isn't there, the sell on, the percentage and all that, because that's what Webber's smart at. That's not what we've had before, which I suppose is the same for the wage drops as well, which I'm not sure of your thoughts on it, but the idea that the players have their wages reduced for going down is, one, in terms of finances, it's really sensible, and it's a very different route to what we've been down before. You look at the season before Webber came, you look at players like Stephen Naismith pocketing loads of money, players like John Ruddy, who then he let go, Ryan Bennett as well, players he let go. And I think also that probably does drive a bit more hunger within the players to get back into the Premier League. Do you think there could be a bit of negativity perhaps, and them being a bit like, oh, I've had my wages sloshed, but we gave it our all? Do you think that could possibly happen?
Well, it could accelerate exits, because it could be people going that I want to match the wages that I got this year. It depends what you look at, and it depends on players' ages as well. That could be a way, because I was kind of thinking to myself at one point, right, how are we going to jettison some of the older players that are going to have less interest? Yeah. Right? How are we going to get rid of them? But if they've got the hunger to try and match those wages, or it's going to cost a team less in wages to get them, then it's going to be easier to move them on. And I think there's also got to be an element with Norwich City of, as well as injecting some fresh, and I think it's a done. I think we've already added a number of players to both the academy squads and the first team squads for next season. More are going to come. I think we've already got Jamal Lewis's replacement if he does go, in Sam McCallum. Yeah. Right. I think that's done with that in mind. We've got Sedani, we've got the lad Sorensen they're talking about in Denmark. The noises have been made about that seems to be one that is in the works, I think. Now, if you look at this, we're being proactive on the recruitment. We are going out and we're getting players, but we're sticking to the model of trying to find value and create value. And I'm happy for us to do that. And if we spend 10 million quid on a player, it's going to be because we can believe we can sell him for at least double that and probably 3 and 4 times that. And the way that you do that is by shopping in foreign markets. But there's also the thing of you've got to keep bringing through players from the academy. You've got to create space to give them game time. The prime example for that at the moment is Adam Ida.
Yeah. So
does that mean that Teemu Pukki goes? People would be gutted to see it happen, but you get to an age where you kind of get away from the romanticism of the whole thing, right? And I look at Teemu Pukki, I look at that someone that's operating at the peak of their powers. I don't think he'll have any great desire to leave Norwich. I think he's enjoying his football as much as he ever has. But if he gets a chance to maybe have another crack at the Champions League, say, with a club somewhere that can match what he'll be getting next season, do we let him go for a fee that will be nowhere near what's talked about for the younger players? Maybe. Yeah. And there's also the element of, I mean, if you keep a player, right, say we get, right, this is not something that's happening, I'm just using this as an example. Say we got offered 8 million quid for Teemu Pukki, right? People would go, oh my God, he scored more 1 and 2 goals, like 1 goal every 2 games for Norwich City. How can you let him go for £8 million, right? Look at his age, right? Look at whether he would resent getting kept at the club against his will, which we've seen in the past. Every football fan has. That doesn't work, keeping a player when they want to go, right? So all of these factors have to be considered. Everyone just looks at the money and the player, and it's like, those are the only 2 determining factors. There's so much more to every single transfer than that. And if Teemu Pukki was to go for 8 million quid, that would not anger me that much, as long as Adam Ida get the chance to step up and prove his worth. Whereas the opposite side of that is, if we were to sell Ben Godfrey for 20 million, which will never happen, by the way, right, under Webber's watch. But if we were to go, right, Godfrey wants to go 20 million quid, and it's like, oh yeah, well, just let him go, they're a bigger club, whatever. He'll want to go to Spurs eventually. No, Ben Godfrey's a Champions League quality player. Yeah. So get what we deserve for him, which is double that. And I think that's the good thing about having Stuart Webber as the sporting director is I believe that sensible decisions will be made with that. The balancing act for him is creating opportunities for young players to get a chance to come into the team next season, ensuring that the recruitment is... I mean, what happened is, like, in terms of the first sort of kind of period of recruitment that got us to the title, everyone's looking at it and it's like, wow, he built this out of a source person. It's like, how's he done that?
Yeah.
Right? And now you look at this season, it's like everyone's been absolutely awful. Has he lost it? Whatever. I don't think he has. I think he went into this season with an idea of what it would be. Norwich City are now a self-funding club, right? So what we make, which we couldn't do with the James Maddison transfer, we can now reinvest in the squad if we want to or if we need to. And I don't think there will be an aversion to doing that. But I think we will only do it if there's value to be created. It comes back to this idea of value again. But value can be created by bringing academy players in. Value can be created by bringing players in from Denmark and Romania and places like that. Value's not going to be created, or getting Sam McCallum from Coventry City, should I say. But notice, by the way, the difference in fee there.
Yeah.
You get Mario Vrancic for, you said 650, right? Sam McCallum was 3.3. And that's for a player that's operating in the lower leagues in England. So that shows you, right? Dennis Mann, one of the top wonder kids, and it's 8 million quid that you said was getting quoted, right? Now, these are just, I'm not saying these are all exact figures. The McCallum one I'm fairly confident on, right? Yeah. And the Vrancic one you seem to know, right? This Dennis Mann one's right? Like, how are you paying for a kid for Coventry like half of what you're paying for one of the world's top 50 wonder kids according to a list? Yeah. You know, the reason for that is the prices in English football are so massively, grossly inflated, and that comes on to another thing that really angers me that I'm going to touch on, right? But see when you're in a situation that a club that's a sort of lower mid-table championship club is going to the wall potentially, right? Whilst Chelsea and Man City and all these other teams are buying up every kid under the sun just because they can afford it, right? The largesse of the Premier League has outgrown the rest of the English football pyramid. And the English football pyramid was, in my opinion, the best in the world, right? And the Premier League, the top end of it, is in danger of ruining that. And that's what is like partly to blame. You couldn't do what Paul Lambert did with Norwich City now, where you take a team of pretty much League One players, right?
Yeah.
And you make them play at like mid-table Premier League level, right? You couldn't do that. It would be impossible, right?
Yeah.
They would be in a dogfight, and it would be pretty much as it's been, maybe not as bad as this season. That's a kind of idiomatic discussion. But the thing is, like, you could not do that romantic kind of story now, especially playing an attacking way, right? If you do it more defensively minded, maybe you could do something, right? But even what Burnley did in years gone by and stuff like that, Bournemouth are the perfect example this season. They've been able to sustain themselves at level playing an attractive style for so long, right? And things haven't moved forward. Certain things have kind of gone a wee bit backwards under Eddie Howe. He's a bit of bad luck this season. But I'll tell you what, they've been found out this season, right? And they're in real trouble financially when they go down because they've tried to live at this inflated status.
Yeah.
Norwich City are never going to do that. And if that means we bounce between both divisions, I'm signing up for that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I don't know who I was talking to about it actually, but I drew a comparison between Norwich and Burnley, and it was literally like, I'm so glad I support Norwich and not Burnley because they're so boring, aren't they? And obviously you said a team like Bournemouth, it's only a matter of time before you get sniffed out and find yourself up in a dangerous situation, which I think is arguably the same for Villa. I'm not actually too sure of the ins and outs. The last thing I'm going to ask is about your opinion on some of Norwich's older-ish players. So for the two examples I've got, in terms of them leaving or staying, Tim Krul I think will stay, and then there's Mario Vrancic as well, where I do have a little bit of concern because I did put a tweet out yesterday, although I think that was just sort of draw eyes to the tweet in regard to the fact I said build next year's team around Mario Vrancic. That's not going to happen, but he is quite clearly a very important player for Norwich. Well, he should have been this season. He could have been, and we saw yesterday was pretty good. But do you see him staying? Because I wouldn't blame him for leaving or wanting to leave.
Right. So we're going to disagree a wee bit here.
Ooh.
I think that Mario Vrancic is a player that looks wonderful in the Championship for Norwich City because his physical abilities are up to the level of the Championship, and his technical ability is of a Premier League level, and his free kicks in particular are just a thing of beauty. But I think Mario Vrancic in the Championship, yes, he can be a team for an important player for Norwich City, and yes, you could make him the centrepiece of that team, but you would reach the same problem if we did come up.
Yeah.
So I think what you've got to do is try and do it in a different way. And I think what Norwich City need more athleticism in the middle of the park. We've got enough technique in the team, right? We've got loads of technical players, right? And don't get me wrong, for the bits that we've got at the moment, I think it's absolutely right. Vrancic should have been in sooner. And it's just to do with that familiarity, to do with the cohesion, the way the other parts work. Stiepermann, I think, is a more important part than that because I think Vrancic is pretty much interchangeable with Kenny McLean in most aspects, right?
That's a brave thing to say to Norwich City fans.
I really
probably
do.
agree. I'd be inclined to agree.
Left-footed number 8s, one's slightly better, got a slightly better left foot, one's got a slightly better engine, right? Yeah. But that's pretty much it. I think they're fairly interchangeable as players. But look at their ages, right? Look at where Norwich City have fallen down this season. Norwich City have fallen down because they can't do what Southampton did after 10 minutes against us, and that is constantly press, bang, 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 in the middle of the park, tight, on the ball, and we're on the ball City, right? We've not been on the ball with the pressing, and that is the problem, right? That is where we have been let down. So where I expect us to strengthen is by adding legs in the middle of the park.
I suppose that's what Sorensen is, I suppose.
I think that's the idea. If that does come to fruition, which I can't, it does seem to be quite sort of firm, what's been reported in Denmark. I think that's what the thinking would be behind that signing. In terms of, do you mean concerns about older players going, or do you mean, is there older players I would like to see go? I think there needs to be turnover. Yeah. There does need to be turnover. Part of bringing, you can't just end up with a squad of 40 players. Actually, registration-wise in the Championship, you can. But you don't want to end up with a squad of 40 players. There's a lot to be said for having a tight-knit squad the way that Nuno Espirito Santo, for example, has it at Wolves, where he's used so few players. I think too few, actually, for that to be sustainable with Europe again. Yep. Right? He's going to have to add. But Norwich City need... My concern is the Moritz Leitners of the world, right? Yeah. Moritz Leitner's not got the physical capabilities of playing in the Premier League, which is why we've not seen him, right? They've obviously decided that. So if that's the case, right, what's the point in having him? And maybe for next season's championship season, if you jettison a few other bodies, yes, right? But there's a few players hanging around that squad, a bit like what it maybe got like with the likes of Russell Martin, where he was just there, right? And you've got to just say, right, like Kyle Lafferty was another one at one point, where you're just thinking, right, we need to shift these guys on, whether it's a loan just to give them football and they leave on a free, whatever it is, just let's not end up with a massively bloated pool. Yeah. But we also need to make sure that the characters that we add are good people and that they manage to sort of work well, both in a football sense and in terms of personality, with what exists within the camp. So, yeah, that's the thing for me is if you're going to keep some of the experienced players, which experienced players do you keep? Mm-hmm. And how do you get rid of the ones that might prove quite divisive? Say we get an offer for Marcus Stiepermann, like that's going to be one that Norwich City fans are like, oh yeah, well we played much better when he came back in last season. But I think there's going to be, here's my prediction, right? I think there's going to be some very unpopular decisions made this summer. Yeah. And I think those same unpopular decisions are going to turn out vindicated.
Well, that's what happened when Webber came in. You look at Ruddy, Howson, then Jacob Murphy, then players leaving. Exactly. It was necessary. It wasn't like where I don't want Norwich to fall into the trap of sort of living off nostalgia of the 18-19 season, which could be a problem. Although from what you've said, I don't think it will. We all know that there's going to be some sort of unpopular opinion or some sort of unpopular transfer from Stuart Webber because the guy carries himself in a manner that is admirable. But at times, sometimes there is a bit of a, all right, can you calm it down a little bit? He's very direct with the fans, but I think that is another. I do as well, but I think I would like to put a video podcast, whatever, on Stuart Webber solely, like we have done for Daniel Farke. Although we find ourselves continuously referencing Stuart Webber throughout this, which I think would be the same for a podcast about him, which sort of says to you the fact that they're a pair, they're a duo, they work together. And I know he described Daniel Farke as, was it expendable, whatever, at the beginning when he said he came in, he said the head coach model would be so it's not based around the individual, instead it's about the
but that's just about understanding the way that this structure works, because there's been an ignorance in British football for so many years about the way that the structure, which is, by the way, is normal in Germany, in Spain, France, everywhere else is normal.
Well, everyone else is coming around now, aren't they?
Well, that's it. That's it. Like, all the other clubs are doing it. Everyone focuses on Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. Look at the work that Michael Edwards has done. It's amazing, right? Alex Ferguson was synonymous with all the success at Manchester United. People forget about Malcolm Edwards and David Gill, who were the power brokers behind the scenes that were making the transfers happen for him. Yeah. Right? Now, that's the only difference with Norwich City is we know the gang that makes the transfers happen, right? The guy that sets the culture of the organisation, right? The whole club, and that is Stuart Webber.
Yeah.
Daniel Farke, yes, he is expendable, but that doesn't mean that we're just going to chuck him as soon as results. I mean, if Stuart Webber was of that ilk, his patience would have broken earlier in that second season, or even during the first season. But he knew the stage the club is at. He'll know it's his biggest summer. It's the biggest summer of his career. It's the biggest summer of Daniel Farke's career. And it's the biggest summer of pretty much every one of that playing squad's careers. Mm-hmm. Can't you think of many of them for whom you wouldn't say that? And that's maybe Teemu Pukki, because like the Euros have been delayed. And I'm sure playing for Finland at a major tournament will be the highlight of his career. But that, as a Scotsman, I acutely feel the pain of not being able to do that very much.
I won't say anything, mate. I won't say anything.
But at least when we get there, we'll enjoy it. We'll not obsess over getting to semi-finals and then winning it when we ultimately don't.
So I'll say it's ironic I'm wearing this one as well, isn't it? Oh dear.
Listen, man. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. By the way, it's been really good.
I
think it's a massive summer. It's huge.
Make or break.
For
Daniel Farke, absolutely.
Farke, yes. But
sort of is for Webber as well, though.
The weird thing is, Farke, I mean, obviously they'll consult transfers. Stuart Webber's not just going to bring a player in. It's not going to be Gael Kakuta to Chelsea type stuff. But he's going to bring players in that Daniel Farke thinks has obviously watched and his team have watched, think will make a difference, right? It's not all just done off Webber's sort of say-so. But, yeah, it is make or break for Daniel Farke.
Yeah.
It's just about make or break for Stuart Webber. I think Stuart Webber gets another window. And then, I mean, if he has 2 more really bad recruitment windows, then to be honest, which I don't see him having. I rate the guy too highly. I agree. I think his future in football is at a higher level than Norwich City. I really do.
Absolutely. And
that's the thing. Like, I think the one thing that we can be happy about is we can be glad that we've got someone like that at the helm, who, he said in my podcast, we've got him for 2 more years, right? Hopefully, the second of those years is having survived and consolidated in the Premier League with a squad of our own that's full impact with value for someone else to come and take the reins and move it on. And that's what you've got to hope. I think there's more chance of Stuart Webber getting poached than Daniel Farke at any point in this process.
Yeah,
but
I agree with that.
Listen, I think it's a massive summer for them both. Farke is, I said it earlier, the key thing is the start next season. If we are not in and around the top 6 after 10 games, then I'm thinking, right, what's wrong here? Or like if you don't see like some sort of progression in some way, like finishing 14th again is not on. That's not on, right? Maybe just outside the top 6, I don't even think you get away with that. I think you've got to be a playoff team, personally. I mean, I don't set the expectations for the manager. Circumstances, COVID might re-break out, anything could happen. The world's a weirder place now. But, it's massive. But he deserves the time. Like, the big premise of this pod was, should he be sacked? No, he blooming well shouldn't, right? And the guy's still a hero. He's still on his horse, and I see no reason to knock him off.
Do you know what? You've done that brilliantly. He's still on his horse. Let's not knock him off. Hodgie, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I do just want to ask you, where can everyone find you for those who don't know who you are already?
In a cave in Scotland. No, I'm on Twitter at Hodgie the Hack. That's HODGEY the Hack. THEHACK. Which is obviously a joke because I'm a sort of journalist, but also sort of no working because COVID in it. So you can find me on there. I've also got my own podcast, which is My Corona Podcast, which you can find on all the major podcast platforms. Search for My Corona Podcast by Hodgie the Hack, and it's at My Corona Pod on Twitter.
Perfect. Right. Well, there you go. It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has been fun. It's been nearly 2 hours as well. So this is going to be a very chunky listen for everyone listening. Make sure you let us know your thoughts in the comments down below on everything and anything that we've said, because we've said some interesting things, although this mostly has just been us agreeing quite politely, hasn't it? But sometimes you have to do that from time to time.
We are British. It's like British sensibility, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, I hate to disagree with you, but
that is exactly...
I think the only one is building the team around Vrancic next season, man. Can he do that?
Well, no, yeah. I suppose you've converted me. I suppose you've done a good job there, because I'm very stubborn when it comes down to Norwich City. So that's something you can put on the accolades.
That is one. It's gone in the CV, mate, and the LinkedIn page.
Oh, turning the mind of the most stubborn person on the planet. Right, Hodgie, it's been a pleasure. Make sure you all check out the description box down below. You'll find all of Hodgie's links. You'll find my links as well. I've no idea when the next podcast will be, but until next time, we'll see you again very, very soon.